So Dan, in your book, The Impact Makers, you talk a lot about the importance of embracing diverse perspectives. And this is a big challenge today, more than it's ever been. And especially now, we see the emergence of Gen Z kind of taking hold, raising up to become leaders. How does that impact the approaches we need to think about and take when it comes to attracting and keeping top talent?
Tim, when we think about diverse teams, we can think across a whole spectrum of different attributes. And it's not just about racial diversity, it's not about gender diversity, it can be about work experience diversity. But also, we have to think about multi-generational teams. And when we're talking about Gen Z, we're talking about the fastest growing new segment of the workforce. By 2025, Gen Z is going to represent about a third of the total workforce. So it's a major presence. And if we're leaders of multi-generational teams, how do we best attract and retain the top talent? Because as we know, technology, innovation, best products, customer experience, all important for competitive advantage. But at the end of the day, the quality of the people and the talent you have in your organization is another compelling competitive advantage. So really understanding what motivates and really is going to attract and create loyalty with Gen Z is at the crux of effective leadership. And research shows some really interesting things about what Gen Z is really looking for in terms of their employment experience. It's really different than previous generations. They're much more intent around understanding the strategy and the commitment of companies to society and being able to look at things such as social justice, social responsibility. Those are things that are going to be part of your brand that are going to be definitely important. From a leadership perspective, what they're looking for is the courage and the openness to empower them and to provide a career path for development that they can see a long-term future in. And if you don't provide that, if you're not available and engaging, they're going to leave. And the numbers show over the last few years, high migration. There isn't the patience factor that we've seen before. And if you're not going to provide that kind of environment, work schedule flexibility, they're much more in tune with hybrid or remote working environment. Someone else is going to offer that, and they're not bashful about really voting with their feet and moving on. And so you're going to lose some competitive advantage in everything that goes into constantly replacing the loss of talent. So understand Gen Z, embrace what they care about, and you will achieve exceptional results and provide true leadership that isn't command control, but it's about putting others first and really applying a servant leader mindset.
Yeah, Dan, that's fascinating. I was going to say exactly what you just said there at the end is so key, that it really is that servant leadership mindset that I think in the days of yore, in the olden days, there's this idea that you would get a job and stay there forever. And I feel like nowadays what Gen Z is seeing is that we don't have to do that. And they've thrown out that playbook. And now it's my work should support my life, not, I work to have a life. And I feel like that difference of perspective is so profound and requires, as you said, a different way that leaders interact with Gen Z in this servant leadership mindset, not in a, as you said, command and control. I love that perspective. Could you speak more to that? Because I feel like what I'm hearing and seeing is there's a disconnect between understanding and the perhaps empathy of leaders of today and the Gen Z, and this attitude that Gen Z just doesn't want to work, or Gen Z is lazy, or Gen Z doesn't understand what our work ethic is. How do we bridge that gap? How can a leader have the right perspective, have the right empathy and understanding, and help understand where Gen Z is coming from to support and create an environment that's not only conducive to Gen Z workers, but also attracts that talent?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Sometimes there's confusion around servant leader mindset not being synonymous with emphasizing accountability. And that's not true at all. And in fact, by investing in more empowerment and really showing your trust in your team and giving them that responsibility to really take the reins and really drive results without the helicopter management that we've seen traditionally, that actually drives greater accountability, right? Because you're not absolving them. Because when you helicopter in, you're really actually reducing the accountability on because you are actually taking over and again command control. But when you trust and empower with a clear set of quantifiable, measurable outcomes, then you're creating a path to success and also a path for continuous learning and development from the learning, because we're never, as leaders or as team members, never going to be perfect. We're never going to always hit the home run. How do we evolve over time, adapt, take the learning, apply it going forward? So that's the other part of this empowerment of a servant leader mindset, which is recognizing that we are always continuously learning. We always have room to improve. And you're demonstrating it not just through your words, but through your actions and your behaviors as a leader.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that this idea of accountability is so important. Even without Gen Z, I think leaders need to be better about how they handle accountability. So I'd love to explore that. I'm curious from a practical standpoint, how should we be thinking about attracting Gen Z talent? Because let's first just set the table that Gen Z has a lot that they bring to us, to the table. They have the understanding of technology, they understand, social, they understand, communication in a different way than most people do, the speed of communication. I think they bring a lot of value to organizations. So what are some practical ways that we should think about attracting that talent? Is it that we should have Gen Z people on our team who are ambassadors, for lack of a better word? Should we, start to use their lingo? Should we be posting memes? Like, how do we attract Gen Z talent? Because I feel like we are missing out by not making this a proactive effort. And also, if we're not careful, we'll completely miss the boat, and then we'll fall to our competitors, who have the more youthful energy and attitude and perspective that we all need.
Yeah, I think a couple of things can be really impactful. The first is the transparency in the way in which communication happens. And that starts all the way up front, even during a recruitment process, of being really explicit about what the organization stands for, what the expectations are for a given role. And I think also emphasizing as part of that, that success is actually measured through impact, not just through volume of activity. And I think being very explicit and clear and open about that from the very beginning, as you're forming a interpersonal relationship with a Gen Z candidate, is something that we know, again, from the research of what they value, that they would respect and feel more confident about what that path looks going forward. I think the second key aspect, and it can be part of the upfront expectation setting, is that the, again, output or outcomes and impact, that's ultimately the most important thing. The trying to drive conformity through a very specific and sameness in terms of work schedules, come into the office from this hour to this hour in terms of physically how you work, but providing a little more flexibility to say that we understand that everyone really responds and optimizes performance differently. We're not all cut from the same cloth, and showing that there's some degree of flexibility there would be very beneficial in terms of, again, instilling more confidence from the Gen Z and getting better performance from them. And notice I kept coming back to outcomes and impact. There's measurement, and there is a very specific aspect to that, that both the Gen Z team member and the leader, they're both working from the same page. And that's really important to have that as kind of a mutual contract in terms of how we work together going forward.
I wanted to unpack that further because I think you're right. Impact and outcomes are so fundamentally important here. I can imagine being in the shoes of someone listening or watching this who's a VP who, is hiring people for their team, but they don't have the autonomy, the control of leadership at the top. And to them, the goals that they're given, handed down to them, may be, get more leads, get more MQLs, drive revenue. How can someone in that situation help quantify or measure the impact and the outcome so that they can attract the top talent and communicate that and have, as you said, this mutual contract? Are there ways that they can make that invisible visible, perhaps?
Yeah, I think it comes down to being able to formulate and articulate marketing relevant KPIs or measurable outcomes that the team, including the Gen Z and the other team members, that they can directly see the relationship between what they're contributing in terms of the work of the team to a meaningful, measurable goal that's relevant in the space of marketing. So a company is always going to have a broad set of strategic objectives, going to be operational driven objectives in terms of cost efficiency, in terms of productivity. But from a marketer's perspective, they're going to be very relevant goals. It may be around brand and building positive brand perception in a competitive marketplace. It may be around contributing to pipeline build in partnership with sales. But the key is to have a manageable set of high priority, measurable outcomes that the team can rally behind and be able to correlate their work to. And by having that, that's back to the transparency in terms of how the team is contributing, how we're measuring success. It's a benchmark against which learning can be applied, and you see the results of applying that through improved performance. So it really benefits everyone across the board. But again, there has to be clarity and focus in terms of what those set of marketing measures are.
Yeah, and we all need that. I feel like there's so many organizations right now that are missing that clarity, as you said, from a marketing perspective of what are the outcomes, what is the impact, rather than just going through the motions, for lack of a better word, to achieve these productivity, efficiency, business outcomes without an understanding of what are we really doing here? Why are we here? What are we trying to accomplish? And what is the impact that we're having? And why is it a good thing? And I feel like if we understood that better as marketers, it would not only help our teams, as we're discussing here, but it would help our marketing as well to stand out, to matter, to be differentiated, and to really have meaning and purpose. So I feel like this is something we can all improve upon. I don't know many people I can think of who are doing this well and consistently.